Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 246. I hope you all had an amazing weekend, and we have a lot to cover in today's Red Pill, so we want to get into it. But very quickly, before we get started, I have something very special to share with you all. Make sure to check out the link in the description if you'd like to see what my team and I have been working on tirelessly behind the scenes. I have a brand new project and a new platform that is set to launch on New Year's Day. It's without a doubt the most important project I've ever released, and what I believe is the most important time in history for it to be released. So, words truly can't express how much I'm looking forward to this launch. We've been working so hard on this behind the scenes, and I wanted to share a little sneak peek with you all leading up to the end of the year. And I'll make sure to, of course, share more info with you as we get closer to our launch date. But for now, go ahead and check out the link in the description or in the pinned comment below, and it'll take you to this page right over here where you can see what we've been building. This is going to be an absolute game changer. Now, before we kick off today's Red Pill podcast, make sure to get relaxed. Get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's a little earlier in the day, or a glass of wine or beer or any beverage of your choice if it's getting a little later out there in the Matrix. I myself am going with some plain old water today. And make sure to comment below this post here on Patreon to vote on the altcoins that you'd like me to cover in next week's Red Pill podcast. But please, before you leave a comment, just make sure that you use the search function here on Patreon to check that I have not covered that project in at least 3 months. And in the event that it's been over 3 months since I've reviewed that altcoin, or if I've never covered that altcoin before, as long as it has at least 1 year of trading history here on TradingView, you can go ahead and comment below with the name of that altcoin and include the ticker symbol next to it as well. And whatever submissions get the most likes, those top 4 projects will be selected for next week's Red Pill. And I urge you guys to comment below the projects that you're interested in, and definitely make sure to look through the comments and leave some votes. So that way it's a little bit more easy for us for next week to pick the projects that we'll review. Now, we want to get straight into a quick decode today because it's going to set the tone for the week ahead. As usual, we are going to focus on the immediate short term, and I believe it's a very important place to start here. So, as some of you might remember from earlier decodes just over the past month or so from today, I mentioned the significance of this specific time of year that we're in right now, since the sun is in the constellation Ophiuchus when utilizing 13 sign zodiac. And Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer, as you can see right here. Naturally, the reason why that's significant is because we're in the year of the snake. And of course, the snake is the serpent, and pretty much everything involving this direct connection to the snake or the serpent this year has been seemingly negative. We can't deny that. So just a quick reminder for those who are new here, we had the entire market crash starting effectively right when we entered the year of the snake, at the very end of January this year, moving into February 2025. And then the market bottomed on April 7th. And what's so important about the date of April 7th is that it is the 97th day of this year. And I'll quickly show you by the code. Serpent equals 97 in Gematria. Again, this is the reason why I utilize not only astrology and multiple forms of astrology, but I include the numerology and gematria elements as well, because those are the additional links that kind of bind everything together here for a more holistic system. Again, here at Waters Above, we are esoteric investors, and even astrology has become quite mainstream. So it's important for you to add in these additional layers so you could understand what's happening in these markets. But now getting back to where we're at in this sign of Ophiuchus, which, by the way, if I'm pronouncing it improperly, I apologize. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce this word, but bear with me here. So we still have until between December 17th until December 18th, effectively, when the sun officially moves into the sign of Sagittarius. And really quickly, because some might be wondering based on these specific dates that I'm referencing, again, this would be utilizing 13 sign zodiac and sidereal astrology, not the tropical system dates. And there's nothing wrong with tropical. It's just for my work, I prefer to utilize both. But when it comes to the specific form of decoding that I'm doing here, I tend to lean a little bit more towards sidereal. Kind of the same with double digit date numerology. You might see me use this date numerology quite often. And effectively, whenever we have any digits larger than 2, double digits, it will get reduced to 2 digits. And then if it is 2 digits, it will be added as such. So it's not getting reduced. For example, if I was to look at the month of 12, and then we're looking at, well, we'll just look at today's date. That'll make it a lot easier so you guys can see the side by side. So we have 2025, that's 4 digits, so it's being broken down into 2 each. Simple. Then we have December as exoterically, the 12th month, and we're on the 14th day. Therefore, it's 12 plus 14 plus 20 plus 25, and then there's no more reduction. Whilst a standard date numerology is just 1 digit at a time. And then it gets combined, and then this would actually get further reduced for what's called life path. So we would look at this as the number 8. Whilst this double digit date numerology, we would keep up till it's 2 digits, meaning after 99, 100 wouldn't count anymore. But the point that I'm getting to here is this is a very powerful and not so well known or popularly used form of date numerology. And anybody who's been following my work, you know that I've been using this since day one. So I've been effectively leaning more on this form of date numerology to give a higher level of accuracy for half a decade now. And this has helped me a lot with accuracy in identifying key dates with my preference. And I, of course, urge all decoders here to find a system that works for you. So this isn't me saying that life path numerology is wrong or me saying that tropical astrology is wrong or inaccurate. Please don't take it that way. So as I was saying, we still have a couple more days in the sign of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, in the year of the serpent. That means the trinity of dates ahead between the 16th through the 18th are going to be important for me. So we have the 16th, 17th, and 18th. I would actually even shift this up one and make it the 17, 18, 19, and you're going to see why a little bit later. Now, there's a method to the madness here, because when we identify or when we isolate a key date, we always look at the day before and the day after as like a ripple effect of energy. The eve of the date and the following day. This is kind of like the lead up, then you have the climax, and then you have the aftermath, right? That's how everything in this world works. You have the day before you were born, you have the day of birth, and then you have your first day of life. Also, this is very helpful to answer the common question that could be for people who are like living in Australia, for example, where they're a day ahead. So you could look at decoding this way too. We're just like 8 minutes into today's podcast, and I feel like I've given quite a bit of quite a few lessons actually in decoding. So that's hopefully helpful for some of you guys that are newer here, or more helpful for people that are trying to learn more about decoding. But getting back to this, there's like a trinity of dates ahead. If we start with the 16th, 17th, 18th, it's the reason of isolating specifically that middle date of the 17th. And this is, of course, not only tied back to Ophiuchus, but it's going to be tied back to a couple other things, and we're going to get to that today, specifically for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Okay, so this is a very important setting the tone moment, if you will. So the reason I'm isolating these dates is because likely, and I'm not saying this to be dramatic, you guys should know me by now. I'm not saying this to be dramatic, but likely something will occur in the world, like a psyop, during these 3 dates, one of these 3. And I'm probably going to lean closer to the 17th, 18th. But it will likely affect markets, including, of course, cryptocurrency. But let me be very clear here. I'm not calling for anything like crazy drastic, like a 9/11 like event or anything even close to that. We heard this from Candace Owens recently. No offense to her, and I'm not saying this to throw any shade at her. It's just there was this tweet from her that's made its rounds regarding the second week of December. And although I definitely feel something is around the corner, it's just with her being so famous. And then on top of that, we have all this three-eye Atlas comet stuff going on. It's just getting a little bit exhausting as a professional decoder to give any of my attention to that stuff when I see like Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about it. Okay, so it's not me discounting it. It's just from my, well, first of all, I'm way too busy with the things that I'm building. And I urge you all to live a life that's like that, actually. Not to copy me, but put more energy into your family, friends, your people, your projects, your art, the things that excite you. And don't make your whole life about this type of stuff because it will drain you, you know? This infinite decode of the conspiracy. Like, don't let that become your purpose. You know, it might be your purpose in that way, and I don't want to sound judgmental, but as somebody who's a professional decoder, I've been lost in the sauce myself. I've been somebody that's gotten really deep into conspiracy, and then I notice like it's not actually making my life any better. It's not like making me improve as a man, as a leader, as a partner, as a person that could be very effective in bringing more support to the ones that are around me that maybe don't have the skills or the abilities that I have. And that's not me saying that you should try to posture yourself as a savior type by any means, but I do believe everyone who's here, you're here for a reason, and you're here because I'm speaking to the ears of leadership right now. None of you are my followers. You're all leaders. You're all fucking amazing. And it's these conspiracies that we get like kind of sucked into that take away a lot of our life force and demotivate us and prevent us from being the best version of ourselves. And I'm going to start talking like this a lot more moving forward. And it's a big kind of like commitment I'm making to this new year ahead, just to bring what I believe is the ultimate value to my people. And it can't be done through the charts. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. So we'll continue to do these red pills, of course. I'm a big investor myself. Crypto's the future. We're going to continue this every single week. It's a commitment I've made. I absolutely love making these red pills. It's one of my favorite parts of the week. But I'm just kind of segueing for a moment to be like, if you start to hear about said event happening on the world stage around these particular dates, it's usually a prana harvest. It's a life force energy vacuum. And I want you to protect your prana. I want you to protect your life force. That's really the whole point of what I'm saying here. Anyways, clearly the apex predator wants to siphon all of our energy away for the week ahead. And what better week to do it than the week starting on Hanukkah, which officially starts at sundown today, December 14th. So if you're listening to this, it's likely already officially Hanukkah, but that means Hanukkah has already started in Australia yesterday night. And unfortunately, there was a mass shooting in Sydney, Australia on Bondi Beach, if I got the info correct. I seriously hope all my Sydney Wolves are okay and your families are safe. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We have a big wolf pack over there in Sydney and in Australia in general. Perhaps some could be traveling to Sydney at the moment. It's a weekend, so people go to the beach, hang out with family. It's just horrible to hear what happened. So please, if you're in Sydney, let us know that how things are going over there. I can't assume that they're okay. The wolf pack's got your back. That's facts. But I know a lot of people right now, they're going to be trying to deconstruct if it's a false flag or this or that. It's like, yeah, but real people were killed, right? So it's like, I don't want this to become like a Charlie Kirk thing all over again, where we start to disregard that real people were not affected by this, even though there was definitely a stage being set and it was probably scripted out far in advance. Again, that might offend some people, so that's just where we're at. It's too soon, you know? So I just want to kind of lay out the fact that first and foremost, we care for all of our wolves around the world, and we have a big community in Australia, a very big community in Sydney. We love y'all, and hope that you're okay. Now, it's clear that the apex predator is doing what they can to already start the ritualization of this week, as they've already started the process in Australia with that event. And a lot of people are giving energy to this three-eye Atlas comet because allegedly it's the closest to Earth around December 19th. Again, this information is subject to change depending on where you are. But yeah, that's what I've been told, is that it'll be quote unquote closest to Earth around December 19th, this upcoming Friday. And that just so happens to be the new moon. As you can see right here, a new moon in Sagittarius moving into Capricorn. And lately, new moons have been horrible for price action. But something I do want to show you is back in 2018, at the end of 2018, right over here. So here you're going to see that we were moving from the dates of December 12th through the date of December 17th into 19th, right? By the way, this was the bottom of the bear market. I'm not saying that we're going to have the bottom of the bear market today. I'm just I want to go back. I want to go back in time, and I want to look at what's happening here. And the reason for this is because this December was exactly 1 year after the crypto market experienced euphoria in December the prior year, in 2017. Bitcoin actually bottomed right here around the December new moon. Let me show you this, because we were talking about the new moon. So here we have the new moon in December right there. I mean, yes, we did pop up and we did technically close a couple dailies lower later in that month, but it's the relationship between the new moon, which I find to be pretty fascinating, how there's this downtrend into it. And here we're pretty much in a bottoming structure. Over the next week, we were bottomed, and then we started to pivot out of that. And when I zoom out, even though, yes, we were a bit sideways, that was the absolute worst of it. And I want to spend a little bit of today talking about sentiment, right? Because that's ultimately the most important driver in this crypto market specifically, more than any other market. It's sentiment. It doesn't really affect things like gold or silver too much, just because the average investor in those assets is not the same. You know, when we're talking about crypto, it's much younger crowd, a lot of like unsophisticated money floating in this, a lot of speculative money, and then also a lot of scam, you know, just scammers in general, a lot of people that are leveraging on the fact that it's this new technology, and they prey on older people who've gotten into it, or they prey on the fact that younger people are all just trying to make a quick buck, right? So it exists in this very like murky waters of not the brightest bulbs in the you know, and that's, again, it's not to be disrespectful or anything, it's just, it's part of it, it's part of the whole thing. I'm sure during the dot-com bubble we were going through our own like learning phase of what should I be putting my money in, what shouldn't I, what should I be avoiding. I feel like we're still kind of in the aftermath of the 2021 cycle here in crypto. And for the most part, that was pretty devastating, and some projects are still down and have yet to make an all-time high from that particular cycle, and they've even gotten lower recently. So I think we're kind of in that post-dot-com bubble vibe here in 2025, and the strong have survived. And that's what you need to be keeping your focus on here moving forward, is like, what are those stronger projects, and how could you avoid getting a little bit too lost in what's considered venture capital just for the sake of it, you know? And that's a lesson I've learned for sure in this cycle. I definitely admit that. But with that being said, we've seen what these projects can do even in like tiny relief rallies with Bitcoin. We've seen some of these absolute shit coins go up 500 to 1,000%. And for those people that are just in it for that don't plan on holding these projects long term, then that's all that matters, right? Ultimately, that is effectively all that matters. Let me just plug in my computer. Alrighty. So quickly, want to show you Bitcoin bottoming around the December new moon with an official low pivot date December 14th into December 16th, and today is December 14th. So this aligns with today, actually. And the reason I'm showing you this is not to call a bottom right now, but moreover to take a trip down memory lane and consider sentiment in isolation to analyze what we are now in mid-December 2025, exactly 1 year from what was arguably the last time we were considered to be euphoric here in crypto land, which was over here. So we are exactly 1 year from that moment. And funny enough, you see where the high was, the peak here at this time? December 17th. And we're about to get into that. So back in December 2024, we were in euphoria. Interestingly enough, Bitcoin topped out initially on December 17th, which was the exact date that Bitcoin topped back in 2017. It was the same exact date. I'll zoom in and show you. Right there. And I remember back last year when Bitcoin hit that new all-time high on December 17th in 2024, we even had a bunch of members here in our mastermind community yelling out simulation confirmed, while we hit a new all-time high on the same exact date as we did back in 2017. And we did actually have the altcoins gain more strength into the following month in January of 2025 at the start of the year, which is what happened back in January 2018 as well. We even saw, I mean, it's not technically the highest that XRP went, but XRP went up another leg higher into late January, about a month after this initial top for Bitcoin. So the question is, are we just repeating the same exact move with the ritual bottom on the first day of Saturnalia, just like we had the ritual top on the first day of Saturnalia the prior year, with the complete opposite sentiment that we had at that time, going from euphoria to depression? Well, when we look back at the end of 2018 into 2019, it wasn't really much different than the end of 2021 into 2022 for Bitcoin, considering this top to bottom scenario. And what's made my work here at Waters Above quite popular is actually this chart right here. It's what I teach regarding the solar and the lunar cycles, and that's where we can find another thing in common with the bottom for Bitcoin that happens 1 year after the euphoria phase. And when I say the euphoria phase, I don't necessarily mean Bitcoin in isolation. I mean crypto. The last time we had a euphoria phase in crypto was pretty much the end of 2024 into the very, very beginning of this year, which was a year ago, effectively. So just wanted to get that crystal clear. So the other thing that Bitcoin has in common is the final lunar eclipse of a lunar cycle. And as many of you are aware, if you've been part of our mastermind community for some time, then you'll know that the final lunar eclipse of our current lunar cycle that we're in right now is the total lunar eclipse on March 3rd. It'll be coming up very soon, actually. And with the exception of our last lunar cycle that ended right here, so that being the only cycle, with the exception of, but still it's kind of even lame to say the exception because it bottomed on the eclipse itself. And that's beautiful, because if I was able to tell you that, guys, I have the exact date that Bitcoin will bottom on, that would be like, holy shit, right? That would be absolutely mind-blowing. So just think about this. The fact that we had all other cycles besides this one, we bottomed before the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, except for the last one, we bottomed on the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. It's pretty magical to know this information in advance. And by the way, I was talking about this over here when we were leading up to April 2023. I was making Red Pill podcasts back then for sure. And I was teaching people we're going to recover into April 2023. And the reason why is because we'll be moving into the start of a solar cycle. A lot of people didn't believe that that was possible. A lot of people felt like shit over here. And that's just how it goes. When prices are down, we could see it right now in our own community. People like just losing their shit, right? So it's price that dictates people's emotions, and emotions always are pretty much at their peak at the worst of each opposite of the market's. So effectively you get this, right? Like when we're all scared, depressed, sad, etc., that's probably some of the best times to accumulate. So going back to this, what I was starting to say, with the exception of our last lunar cycle, that concluded on the total lunar eclipse in November 2022, all of the past lunar cycles before that, we actually bottomed leading up to that final lunar eclipse. You could see that here, and we could see that also right here where we bottomed, and then there's our eclipse. And if you look at how Bitcoin recovers from the bottom, it's always a notable rally perfectly into the first isolated total solar eclipse of the following solar cycle. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you guys could see this a little cleaner. And you could just see in our last couple cycles, final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, start of the solar cycle. Final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, start of the solar cycle. Over here, final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, start of the solar cycle. And what you also see they have in common is when we start our solar cycle, we're kind of boring. Here we had a very nasty correction, but this was overextended. I'll show you why. I think this was 300%. So Bitcoin had too dramatic of a relief, which, by the way, I would not even be shocked if we do something like this again. Anyways, here it wasn't even that much. Back when Bitcoin was only $100 it could barely do as much of a relief rally as it did over here. So everything is slightly different. There's other things we have to add to the equation, but the point is that every time without fail, we bottom, the absolute bottom. Like you could hear the change of tone in my voice because some people don't understand like the value of this chart that you're looking at right now. Like this alone is $1 million chart, seriously, because it's showing us a pattern that is cyclical that you could utilize to quote unquote predict. I hate using that word, but you could use it to predict where Bitcoin is likely to go after certain pivot dates, and has everything to do with the eclipses. So we bottomed before this final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. We did that over here too. We did that over here too. And even in our last cycle, we did it on the day of the eclipse. So the last video I put out, people got confused. They were like, okay, so we either bottom in January or we bottom in March. Pick a direction, Waters. And I'm like, that is the fucking direction. Is it going to be October 2026? That's what everyone's saying right now, right? Because Bitcoin needs to take 1 year of correcting to get to the, that's what everyone's saying, right? So I'm here saying probably no, probably not going to do that. We have to look at everything also based on sentiment, and that's the point of today's red pill. Because the last time we had overall bullish sentiment was 1 year ago. And Bitcoin has started doing the complete opposite this year as it did last year. And we'll go through that a little bit more as today's podcast progresses. But I just want to let you know like where I'm at with this whole thing. Because people are getting insanely impatient. People are already pretty decisive on how they expect 2026 to go. Everyone's already called the top, right? Everybody's a genius all of a sudden, funny enough. And I can sense that we're experiencing something where it's clear that social media has taken over the whole conversation. And now investing is more like clear gambling. And it's less of a long time horizon, you know, like something that you looked at to build generational wealth and something that you like really put a lot of time and effort into understanding and then parked your money into it and then didn't feel like all these negative emotions if the prices went down. Like Warren Buffett teaches, if the prices are down and you're really committed to the investment you made, then perhaps you should be getting excited if the price goes down because that gives you an opportunity to buy more, right? It's the only example in reality where we get mad at a discount or we get emotional about the discount in the bad way, which is the opposite of what all the great investors teach, right? So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this first half of today's red pill. I know we've kind of gone into these mini streams of consciousness here on the left and the right, but it's important we talk about because of this particular week we're in right now and all of the things that we're hearing about and all the negativity we're seeing and also the price action. So if you look at how Bitcoin recovers from this bottom and has a notable rally perfectly into the first isolated total solar eclipse of the following solar cycle, And by the way, the reason I'm careful with my language and I've intentionally used the term first isolated total solar eclipse is because in rare instances, we have what we're coming up against between mid February to early March of next year in 2026, which is going to be a total or annular solar eclipse first, followed by immediately followed by a total lunar eclipse just a couple weeks later. And this isn't just any regular total solar eclipse because this solar eclipse will be on Chinese New Year. That means the eclipse energy is part of that transition in the Lunar New Year, changing signs, right? From the wood snake to the fire horse. And this is very, very important stuff. This is another big layer of the work that I do here. So we're having that be a symbolic thing where the sun and the moon meet each other perfectly on that particular event, right? And you all know that China's a big talk of the town when it comes to things like BRICS and just in general, all the things that have happened this year with tariffs and how every time China got brought up with tariffs, there was a big major market move, especially affecting crypto in a negative way. So think about the year that we're moving into and the fact that it's going to be tied to the energy of that astrological alignment. I feel like that's crucial. So this isn't just any regular solar eclipse. It'll be on Chinese New Year. And the following total lunar eclipse isn't just any regular lunar eclipse because it will be our last total lunar eclipse all the way until New Year's Day on January 1st, 2029, making what we're about to move into our longest solar cycle for Bitcoin, longest one ever. And it's been around since like 2009. It's 2025, guys. Also, whilst all of our past solar cycles were just about 700 days, like somewhere like 692 days to be more exact, but let's just call it around 700 days. The next one that we're going to have, it's going to be at least 875 days, and it could even be technically considered longer if we were to say that it starts on February 17th. That's just the hard thing to say right now because technically we do have a total lunar eclipse following up 2 weeks later. At the end of the day, it's negligible. It's a couple of weeks in the scheme of 2 to 3 years that we're talking about here, right? So we can't be putting too much, can't be losing our minds over 2 weeks out of whatever that span of 100 plus weeks would be, right? I just wanted to be direct and be accurate here with you all so you can understand what's going on here. In the whole history of Bitcoin's existence, it never had a solar cycle this long. And it's during solar cycles where Bitcoin has its most, quote, bullish moves. And it's during lunar cycles where we typically mark lows in the market cycle. So this is very important to invest your attention into, especially since we're now less than 80 days away from the total lunar eclipse on March 3rd. That will mark our final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. Less than 80 days, guys. So you see people are getting so impatient. People are losing their minds. People are like, it's bedlam out there. When you see that type of impatience, it's typically at the final moments of the elite who run this market accomplishing their goal, which is to shake out retail and not have them be a part of this conversation at all. That's the purpose of the recent liquidation event that we had on October 10th. It was to, regardless if you even could access your account or not, they let go of the guillotine. Everyone in a leverage trade got wiped. So this is what they're doing, okay? They realize that they have the influencers in their pockets. Everybody's watching crypto YouTube and X, and everyone now understands that we're in a 4-year cycle. Everyone understands. So when you have everybody agreeing on the same things, the market maker knows what to do. So, lastly, the reason I said the word rare before, I said rare occurrence with regards to the way that these eclipses are stacked with the total solar eclipse before the total the total lunar eclipse. It's regarding the setup for these upcoming eclipses, and it's because the last and only other time, and I don't think I've ever spoke about this. This might be the first time I've ever spoken about this, but the last and the only other time that we've had this during Bitcoin's existence was back in 2015. as you can see here. We have this total solar eclipse followed by the total lunar eclipse. So this was the last and the only other time this has ever occurred. And that was a decade ago, by the way, 2015. It's crazy to even say that, right? How long ago 2015, how close it feels, actually, for me at least. But anyways, now I want to get into the charts and I want to show you what Bitcoin was doing around those eclipses in March and April of 2015. I think that's going to be really powerful for us all to see. Note, one thing to keep in mind, we're looking at these eclipses right here. We have the total lunar eclipse, and then we know right around here, March 20th or so, I believe. Yep, that was the total solar eclipse. So think here to here. Just want you to note that was technically during the time frame of a lunar cycle. It's in this red, and it's not the final lunar eclipse. So we're not moving into a solar cycle like we are soon. But I do find it fascinating, a couple of things that we're about to point out. And the fact that this was the last time that we had this astrological alignment in this setup, it's worth us investigating. It's worth us looking into for sure, especially when it was the only other time it's ever happened for Bitcoin. You know, it's not even like halvings, which have already happened many times for Bitcoin. This is even rarer to see. And I think we're going to connect a lot of dots here in regards to what was going on leading up to that particular eclipse season, that very specific eclipse season. Coming back to March and April 2015, you'll see that Bitcoin had a major correction right here leading up to this eclipse season. And it happened in the month of January, specifically within 1 week of the January new moon. And I want you to pay attention to that nuance, because if you go back a year prior, this was your new moon time frame right over here. And we'll see that Bitcoin actually had a bull trap leading into the January new moon, which marked a lower high. And that was a very quote unquote bullish time, I'm sure, because everybody felt like we were having a relief rally. Maybe Bitcoin's just having its standard little correction and it'll keep going to new all-time highs, but it was a bull trap because it was a lower high. And it was around the January new moon. Then we have exactly 1 year later, we have the January new moon marked a bottom, a bear trap. Now, what just happened this year leading up to the January new moon? Well, that's right. We had a bull trap, and it was revolving around the inauguration of Donald Trump, where we saw the false breakout in Solana on the day him and his wife launched a meme coin, which was clearly the last time that we experienced euphoria, specifically in the crypto market. So there's a theme here, right? And as a decoder, this is actually making me very excited. Regardless of the way price action looks right now, this is making me very excited regarding my outlook on the January new moon that's coming up on January 18th, because it was pretty much the beginning of the end of that euphoria phase this year. So we're talking year to year and just opposites. And as we've had a bull trap around the January new moon this year, I suspect we'll be completing the quote unquote bear trap around the January new moon that's coming up. Again, on the date January 18th, which, by the way, is 45 days from the final lunar eclipse of our lunar cycle. And what I've shown you in several of the recent Red Pill podcasts is how Bitcoin likes to bottom in that exact window of time. So the 2018 bottom, if we go back to it, you'll see that we were bottoming effectively 44 days to around 38 days before the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. Then we're going to go back to 2015, and we're going to see here we got about 39 days. It's pretty good, right? Very, very close in the amount of time. We're talking 38 to 40 days in back-to-back situations that are spread apart by quite a bit of time. And then we also have this example over here even, where, yes, we did technically start bottoming around 4 weeks before the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle, but right here you could see this is day 50. So we did have a big capitulation event that led into the end of October, 51 days before, and then we recovered. This one we had a really nice recovery off, but like it's 2012, man. This was so long ago. Like I'm not going to put too much weight into this. It's just fascinating how all the time Bitcoin likes bottoming before the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. That's really all that matters. That's worth me telling you. And basically, what I just showed you here is the window of all of these examples. If we were to compare to where the March 3rd total lunar eclipse will be, it puts us in the month of January. That's next month. And by the way, when I say bottom, I literally mean the lowest price that Bitcoin went during the entire bear market that it's associated with in that cycle, which is why I'm putting so much time into talking about this every single week as we're finishing up this year and we're getting closer and closer to the month where apparently, quote, all the stars align, unquote. And I don't say that to joke. This is just what we're looking at right here. This is the data that we're faced with. Now, some of you might want to know, since the last time we had this set up with the total solar eclipse right before the total lunar eclipse back in 2015, the question becomes, sorry if that was confusing, what I'm just trying to say is, are we going to repeat January 2015? In plain English, many of you might be wondering that since we kind of pulled that card out and started talking about it. Or what many of you might be already entertaining is January 2022, where we actually start taking a leg down and then we have a basing structure. Perhaps our true quote unquote relief rally comes into late March, whatever, doesn't really matter. This would be your traditional bear market setup where Bitcoin comes down a little bit lower next month based on timing. We chop around, maybe we get a little bit of relief into March, and then we start going down even more and more and more, and then Bitcoin just continues down, 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 all the way until October of next year. That is what a lot of people are starting to talk about now, because that's what Bitcoin has done in the past, apparently. Even though I remember this vividly when we were over here and we were recovering, a lot of quote unquote like respected analysts were talking about how this was the top in April, and how that was because that was the euphoria time. So if we were to measure off of April to where we actually bottomed, that was over 365 days. Clearly, that took 590 days. So you want to know the reason why I don't give a shit about any of this stuff? Is because the only thing that matters to me is where is the final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. Everything else is just nonsense to me. It's narratives and people trying to puzzle things together to fit for whatever the thing that has happened before. It's like, have you ever lived in a place that has snow? I have. And I remember every year we kind of prepared for like, is it going to be a bad winter this year? And then the times where we have a bad winter, we would always assume that next winter is going to be fucked up again. And then it comes around and then it's like the best winter. So it's like we have an event and then we kind of just like stack all our chips on that, and then we disregard the reality of chaos. Like we disregard the element of chaos. And I believe that what's actually providing us with some clarity amongst the chaos is gematria, numerology, and astrology. Have I been perfect in my application of such? Absolutely not. Was I wrong many times this year? For sure. Was I pretty damn good on the dates though? Yes. The direction, very difficult to determine because it's a fucking coin toss. It's one or the other. But if we started to look at the dates that were being called out and put emphasis on, these have been some of the most mind-blowing connections. Even the recent November date that happened in the 47th week of the year. So I, of course, have a lot to learn. I have a lot to grow. I have a lot to refine. I've done very well in these cycles, but ultimately I'm still trying to get better and better and better. I hope that inspires people. And I'm by no means posturing myself at the best at what I do. What I am kind of taking a little tangent to say, though, is I would rather put more weight into what we're reviewing here than these arbitrary concepts like Bitcoin can't hit a new all-time high before the halving. And then it just fucking did it last time, right? Literally over here. Bitcoin hit a new all-time high before the halving. So which one is it? These things are going to decouple after a while. And the reason why is because of the lunar and the solar cycle, in my opinion, and the maturity of the asset. So could we be going all the way down until October? Sure. Sure. Is that my base case? No. And I just wanted to point out this connection to the time frame leading into the 2015 moment, because this was actually a final low in the month of January. And that's been something that we've been entertaining here for some time now because of this connection to the final lunar eclipse of our lunar cycle. And that's right around the corner. So a lot of people are calling for what happened in January 2022 specifically, and the answer is, well, out of everything that I've just reviewed with you here, it does seem the more probable outcome is lower lows in January 2026. And that's what most are expecting. Most are expecting this cycle is over. Most believe the top is in for Bitcoin. And with the price action looking the way that it does right now, I can definitely tell why retail would feel that way. And then to go along with everything I've mentioned earlier regarding the dates up to December 19th, this date right here, between the dates of the 18th and 19th, we have the Bank of Japan will be making their next interest rate decision, which now everyone all of a sudden cares about. They never gave a shit about this. Now everyone cares. Don't you love it? So you could just tell like how sad it is that this is what we've become here in crypto. Everything is about what's the Fed doing? What's the banks doing? Guys, I thought this was to make us the banks. That was the point of crypto. Now it's like we've lost ourselves in this infinite game ran by central banks, which is so funny because it's like I thought we were trying to what was our original mission statement? We veered away. Anyways, sorry to say that, but someone has to. Here we're looking at a chart that everyone has started to share recently in different versions. Everyone is now talking about this. Just like everyone was hoping for rate cuts during the recent Federal Reserve FOMC, and then we did get a 25 basis point rate cut, and then crypto fucking dumped again. So now I'm seeing this chart circulating everywhere showing what happens to crypto after the Bank of Japan does a rate hike, and now this is becoming so popular. What can we expect to happen when everyone is paying attention to the same thing? I'll let you decide. This genius over here, they might be right, by the way, they might be right, so I'm not even trying to be an asshole, but they're saying Japan rate cut incoming December 19th equals bearish for markets. Don't trade emotions, like, sure, but then they say they're currently going short into the Japan rate cut. Okay. And then now we have three examples of something that's happened over the well, I know they haven't touched their rates in like 300,000 years or something. So I get it. I get the isolation of these, obviously. I'm not stupid. But the point that I'm making here is this is now becoming the thing. And everyone's even reaching out to me about it. So if my own people are starting to reach out to me, that means it's made it through several filters of the popular, and it's here. And if you guys are somebody who's interested into this kind of stuff, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, like, think about where we're at right now and how everyone feels about all the same stuff. So at the end of the day, if the goal for the elite was to push the markets down into January, they're going to get what they want because everybody's bearish, right? So we're just giving them cheaper crypto to buy. I hope everyone understands that. Like, it only goes in two ways. And I think this is kind of sad. But again, please know that I'm not writing off this chart. I have zero desire to do that. It's just all this stuff is becoming so popular over on X, and that's when the contrarian in me kicks in. So now that we've been in extreme fear for literally 2 full months, continuing or counting back to the leverage reset that happened on October 10th, it's now December 14th. We've pretty much been in extreme fear since then. And on top of that, it's been 1 full year since we were even close to the sentiment of euphoria here in the crypto market. I, of course, can't count out the fact that the crypto market looks bad right now. But as I've stated before, and I'll say it again, quote, this is my quote, by the way, We are either very close to finishing the altcoin bear market, or we're about to experience the shortest Bitcoin bear market in history. End quote. And starting tomorrow, we move into a 6-week period between now and the end of January, where historically, based on the solar and the lunar cycle chart that I've created, Bitcoin's price looks the worst. But for sophisticated investors, it actually looks the best because it's during peak uncertainty and fear, along with discounted prices, where smart money is filling their bags. The only thing I can see happening in this short window of time that I've called scenario number one is what been calling scenario number one, which lasts until January 7th. I'll say it like this. It's the plane needs to be pulled up soon. The market maker who is piloting this thing needs to pull up the plane, baby, you know? And if that's what were to happen, then it would make this 2015 setup over here very intriguing to me. Because if you look back, and this is very important, if you look back to how many days prior to this total lunar eclipse on April 2015, it's about 80 to 81 days to the lows. And if you were to look at where this March 3rd eclipse is to where we are today, look at that. 80 days. Crazy, right? You can't make this up. Now, of course, I would love for the bottom to be in right now, especially for altcoins. But like I've said many times, Bitcoin dominance tends to hold up and perform stronger in the month of December specifically. So that's another reason why I put emphasis on scenario number one in my recent podcasts. And I isolated the dates of January 6th and 7th since they're 47 days after the November 21st lows, which, funny enough, that was the same exact date that Bitcoin hit the lows during the bear market in 2022 across most exchanges. Let me just show you so you can see what the hell I'm talking about. So we have right here, you see that's November 21st. Again, you can't make this up. It's especially crazy because during that same exact time frame, we had the ritual of Sam Bankman-Fried. And here we are in 2025 at the same exact moment into November 21st, the same date as well. We have the Michael Saylor ritual, both at least so far hitting lows on the date of November 21st, which is interesting because November 21st is actually, for those who are unaware, it's the last day of tropical Scorpio before the sun moves into Sagittarius the following day, naturally. And this is where tropical is really fascinating, as it tends to have a higher accuracy when it comes to more exoteric events, which are, of course, very significant, as it gives the apex predator something to toss at us as a, quote, reason for why certain things happen in the markets, right? Think of it like 9/11 and that kind of stuff, you know? But when it's like more in the shadows, random feeling kind of stuff, it's always sidereal for me, at least. That's what I've noticed. Hence why I use both, because if I want more accuracy, that's what I need to use. But of course, I could use tropical as like my guiding light for understanding some of the things that could be occurring on the exoteric side, such as these big head honchos in the sphere, right? We have people like CZ or Elon or the guy from OpenAI. Like, you know, a lot of the time they're affected quite a bit on these basic tropical dates. Anyways, all I concern myself with is the fact that date is within 48 hours of the new moon, immediately following our final lunar eclipse of the lunar cycle. We're talking about right over here. When I zoom in, you're going to see where the bottom is. It's within 48 hours of the new moon. That's all I care about. I'm not worried about the whole Sam Bankman-Fried and all that shit. So to wrap up this decode, since it seems like we're doing the opposite of everything we did last year, with March and April being incredibly bullish over here, and we were effectively topping out between March and April of last year. And then here we are this year. Let me turn all this off because it might be confusing. So we have March, April 2024, as you can see. Then we have March, April. It almost looks like an inverse chart, right? We have March, April are the lows. So Bitcoin was bottoming in April here instead of starting a multi-month downtrend with deeper lows, right? We actually bottomed there and we recovered and we went higher. And funny enough, go to October. So this is October 9th. Right there. October 9th. This was right around the time that we pivoted too, energetically. So here we went sideways and had some scary shit happen. Here we went up, and then right around the October, this time right here, this year, we did the opposite. We started going up last year. Here we've gone down. It's at the exact pivot time too. So highs, lows, pivot of energy, bullish into December 17th, bearish into what is likely to be December 17th, unless we have a random tomorrow, we just get pulled up and go straight to 100K, right? But effectively, if you just zoom out and look at what we've been doing, it's the opposite, right? So then last year we had the euphoric moment in November leading into December, and here this has been a year later and it's depressing moving into November, December. This is why I'd be focusing on the date of December 17th right here, because you could see it did effectively mark the top. This doesn't really count for me because it was just an exoteric event where a lot of leverage came in, but if there was no leverage on this date, this would have been the true high at the time. So that is why I am keeping my eyes on December 17th, this upcoming Wednesday. Since last year was a local top, perhaps this year it is our local bottom, at least for the month. At least for the month. Sure, we could double bottom in late January. Why not? But this is me risking a little bit and saying that I feel like it's been so similar, just opposite of last year, that it shouldn't shock us if we have a little bit of a bullish pivot between the 17th into the 19th of this month. And since December 17th is, let me show you real quick, coming back to the code, it's a 74 double-digit date numerology. We were talking about the power of that double-digit date numerology earlier. This definitely increases the likelihood of this, since the number 47 and the mirror number 74 have been haunting us all year. For example, April 7th. We went through this earlier, so I'm not going to bother you with this, but just a quick reminder that April 7th, the absolute low price that Bitcoin hit, 74K. So that speaks for itself. And please don't forget how the number 47 that we're talking about is the 15th prime number. So that means the number 15 is hidden within 47, and the day prior, the 16th, where we started today's decode, will be the day leaving 15 days left in this year. So that's definitely putting emphasis on this as well. And naturally, that's the day leading into December 17th, which, just a reminder, again, is the first day of Saturnalia. So we could consider today's decode, in a strange way, Saturnalia decoded, because we essentially touched on all the most important things to discuss regarding the Saturnalia festival timeframe. And don't forget, from the first day of Saturnalia over here to February 16th of next year, it's pretty powerful stuff. By the way, that's the day leaving 47. That is the 47th day of next year. This will be Chinese New Year and also the total solar eclipse. It will show us that they are 8 weeks and 6 days apart. We covered this 86 code in the last red pill. So please rewatch that, because I gave you this date already. So for those that are new here, the reason I'm focusing on this number 86 is because Bitcoin's current all-time high is October 6th, the 6th day in the month that starts with the prefix octo, which means 8. Octagon, octopus, right? It's 8, it's not 10. So this is actually the esoteric 8. Ooh, it's not letting me do the date. $20.30, we made it far. So the date of the current Bitcoin all-time high is not only the esoteric 8/6 date, but it's the day leaving 86 days left in the year. And then after topping out on that exact day, it took 47 days to correct into the date of November 21st, which was the 47th week of the year. We talked about that a little bit ago. And it closed the weekly candle during the exact week that exact week at 86K. And here I am showing you how this upcoming Wednesday, December 17th, is exactly 8 weeks and 6 days leading up to Chinese New Year. So that's definitely crucial in my opinion as well, since the top of Bitcoin is associated with that 86 code and the local bottom for Bitcoin is associated with that 86 code too, as above, so below. And if you really want to see how interconnected this all is, if you look at December 16th or 17th tied to Chinese New Year, it's 62 days apart. This is very important to note because the upcoming total lunar eclipse that we've been talking about all podcast is on the 62nd day of next year. And March 3rd also is tied to Satoshi's birthday. You can see Satoshi's birthday this year, and this date, 3333 33 333. 333 days apart from the 3-3 exoteric date. And then we have 303 becomes 33 in the rules of numerology, removing the 0. So not only is this packed with the 33 code, it's exactly 47 weeks and 4 days apart. That's the palindrome of the number 47. 47 forwards and backwards. Absolutely crazy. So anyways, get ready for Saturnalia, wolves. It's clearly a time of extremes, as we can see in the price action of Bitcoin whenever we isolate that time frame. And as for the few who are calling for like a Santa rally, a Saturnalia rally, I'm actually sticking to scenario 1. And I'm leaning more towards us just chopping sideways from now until the end of the year. And I'll of course reassess if we were to break concretely below support. But for now, we're just range bound at the lows. And this is one of those moments where we just experience what we always experience after a major liquidation event or a sentiment reset. And that also goes for the opposite. This is why I came up with scenario number 1 in the first place, because from April 7th over here over to May 23rd over there, we effectively had a 47-day breakout after the crash into the 478, April 7th. And then from here for 47 days, we went sideways. I could show you all of this again if you want. I mean, I've already done this so many times, but here you go. You have 47 days of sideways before Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. After 47 days from the 47-day crash to right exactly at that moment, 47 days, and Bitcoin hit a new all-time high on that day. So I came up with scenario number 1, and I'm looking that we're here, just in opposite. Here we were sideways at the top. Here we're sideways at what I believe is the bottoming structure. We're in a stabilization phase right now. Yeah, so let's move on. We are very close, family, because today is the 15th on the Bitcoin chart, at least. We have technically the 14th for me, but it's the 15th, and we're talking about the day of Jan 6th into 7th. So that's just about three weeks and 3 days away. Okay, perfect. Well, we'll wrap that up there. Now let's get into these charts. I want to quickly go over Bitcoin. I suspect we have a major CME gap ahead of. Yep, we do. So let's quickly cover that. All right, I'm just going to mark it off real quick for everybody, and then we'll move on because who cares? We get gaps sometimes. That's life. Okay, so we have a gap up to 90. Not a big deal. Let's look at Bitcoin though on like the weekly chart. I just want to see where that weekly close came in. That doesn't look so accurate to me. That looks better right there. Okay, wow, Bitcoin came down to 35 on the weekly RSI. So yeah, you know, when we look at just RSI alone, look at the last time we had RSI this low. The fucking C19 crash. And then lower than that was the bear markets. So the recent crash that we just had was pretty much a full-blown reset of these oscillators. And when I zoom out here, you can see something really fascinating, specifically on this chart, which was the double top, the rejection that we had back in March 2024, and then getting above it. And then this is a really clean chart. I love this chart because it just kind of takes away all the noise and it keeps us focused, right? But let me quickly just look at the weekly moving averages. Okay, Wolf Cross is in already. Obviously, we're starting to see all of our other moving averages cross to the downside. The last time we saw this setup was over here before we move deeper into a bear market. So, of course, this is not the prime crosses that we want to see. Definitely not. 2 week is not looking so horrendous, but let's look at the last time that we saw actually similar RSI. Yeah, we went even lower than that relief rally time. Wow. And we haven't had much of a relief rally yet either. We haven't even gotten close to 100K, technically. And the thing that a lot of people are starting to wait for is this retest of the 55 simple moving average, which sits at around 101K. A lot of people are anticipating we come back to that and get rejected because that's what Bitcoin did in 2022. That's what Bitcoin, sort of did in 2023. It was just way too much of a correction to be waiting for that. It's 70% correction. Bitcoin's only had like a 36% correction so far. So again, like if I end up being right about this idea that we're about to complete the shortest Bitcoin bear market, even if Bitcoin were to go back into like 70K, perhaps, like even if it was to just come back to this area right over here at like 68, 69 to backtest all of this prior resistance and the prior cycle top, just think about what that actually is for Bitcoin. That's about a 45% correction. Here, by the way, in the middle of Bitcoin's bull run, many would argue the end of it, it was a 55% correction before we had a major rally up and even went another leg higher. So there's room for a scenario like this to happen again because of the solar and the lunar cycles. I just don't suspect it will go and drown out again for a following year. That's not what I'm anticipating. I've been very clear about that. So we've had this 55 as a support. We've broke below it, but we've yet to come back to it. So a lot of people are going to be waiting on that. And I suspect there'll be a lot of selling pressure around 98 to 100K because of that. ETH, I don't have to spend too much time on, but this is very fascinating. The relationship that Ethereum has with this major support trend line. So it was the bear market bottom, which by the way, this is really crazy. If you look at the bottom for XRP, or not XRP, ETH, guys, look at how quickly ETH bottomed. So altcoins look like absolute shit when they start crashing. And in this situation, it actually bottomed faster. If we were to look at the same top, what was that, 224 days? That puts you in April. Imagine. And I don't even know how we could have such a big correction because we haven't even broken out into price discovery. So there's absolutely no need for us to go lower than where we did in April. There is no. And I keep calling this out. This inverse head and shoulders is actually pretty clean. But getting back to the trend line, this was a support we broke. Then we got back below it during the tariff crash. We came perfectly back to it. And then when we actually touched it, we did get a little bit of a harsh rejection. And lately, that's what it seems like is happening. We came straight back up. If we want to call this the first touch point, of course, we have some time to go. It's not going to be a clean measurement idea, but this does bring us into this March timeframe. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like how if we are to technically count March as the start of our solar cycle, that could lead us to a rally into March. And that would be wild, because I do suspect we'll have something like this occur. Like what will feel like a mini bear market in the middle of a cycle. Because remember, when I showed you the Bitcoin chart over here, this was the recovery. Let me turn this off. This was your recovery, crazy recovery into the start of the solar cycle. But then Bitcoin took like 500 something days and even had the C19 crash in the midst of it while we were in a solar cycle. So the whole solar cycle does not feel just bullish, 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 okay? We even had this come recently where we started the solar cycle and then we were sideways for 200 days. Then we pivoted perfectly on that eclipse. We went up And then to the next eclipse, we were sideways until the next eclipse. So that might be the case for Bitcoin moving forward, where we move up into August and then we're sideways until the next eclipse season. And then we just stall out and keep stair stepping up to 200K. It's absolutely possible. And that will make 2026 into 2027 feel very unorthodox for all the people that were anticipating that Bitcoin has this textbook 1 year bear market thing. They're going to be caught off guard by that. And again, it's because a lot of people are expecting that now is the reason why I'm starting to dial in my own thesis more. So ETH back into the golden pocket. We need to break above this golden pocket. Ultimately, $4,000 has been a major resistance for us, but Bitcoin dominance is probably going to be strong for the rest of this month. So I'm not anticipating anything otherwise to happen. Also, gold has been looking a lot stronger lately too, which is fascinating how gold has been pretty much fully bought back. This is a very rare structure for gold. Very rare. So what we're seeing right now in gold and silver is like a once in a lifetime move. Pretty crazy. I'm not going to spend too much time on that today. XRP, we talked about the 3 scenarios last week. One of the scenarios was chopping between lows up to, what did I say, 240. So I said pretty much between 180 to 240. That's effectively what I'm personally anticipating all the way up until January 7th. And then that could be make or break time. I've also mentioned how XRP takes a little bit longer when it's in a sideways phase than Bitcoin. Believe it or not, it's just the way it is. And you could zoom out and you could see that for yourself with the way that Bitcoin handled this whole time frame versus XRP. Then XRP has these like explosive moments, right? Bitcoin, not so much. It has much more controlled gains over time. XRP, on the other hand, it's very explosive. It could go from being really sideways and boring and bearish to just out of nowhere major move. So because of this week's price action and because I spent like almost 30 minutes talking about XRP in the last red pill and there's been no clear update in price, I can't speak too much on it. But for those of you that are new to the Wolfpack and you want to know more about XRP specifically, go check out last week's red pill, which was kind of dedicated to XRP in a lot of ways. But as for this week, there's not many updates. We're just range bound. So keep an eye on that 180 level. That could definitely be filled if things want to get spicy over the rest of this month. And I know the market maker likes to bring a lot of pain before reversals. And we've seen this happen even over here for XRP, where you can see we were shelved at around 60 cents. And then we had this major correction coming back to 49 cents right before it just broke out in a straight line. It also did a very similar thing to this right over here, where we had the C19 crash recovery. We had this kind of false rally into August, September. And then when we came down again, we were looking like shit all the way until November 2020. And then out of there, we just popped up in a straight line. This is very textbook XRP. Look at this. Big correction, double bottom right there when it looks the worst because you're expecting lower. It pops up. And these are some pretty substantial moves. I mean, 170% right now in XRP would be glorious. Imagine from right now, us even making half of that. 80% move would be a new all-time high. And that could happen very rapidly. It happened over here too. Just you snap your finger and it moves. That has everything to do though with Bitcoin dominance. So we're going to move on. We have Rose. So it's called Oasis. I've covered this in the past. I must have because I have some data on my charts. Let me just double check. I'm good. Okay. I don't remember the last time I covered this, but clearly we have broken deeper into price discovery to the downside. And this wick from October 10th has just been effectively filled. So it's making me feel, are we just in the process on all of these like really speculative projects? Are we just going to fill all those wicks? If so, that actually makes XRP look very strong in the conversation because XRP had a crazy wipeout, like down to $1 on a bunch of exchanges. So, but yeah, this is not looking good. Here we have our buying climax from back in 2022, and here we are heading into 2026, and we're just continuing lower and lower and lower, and this launched at about 3 cents, and now we're down to a penny. So it's down another 65% from where it's launched. So this has never been in profit. Let's just get that out of the way. This has never been in unless you bought before it was on exchanges, if that was a thing. I'm not quite sure with this project. I don't think that to be the case, or there's some data that I'm missing here on my chart. Meaning, I don't know if there was an airdrop that went down before this thing went on. I have no idea. Anyways, this means everybody in this project is at a loss, no matter when you bought. So again, I'm not trying to talk shit or anything. It's just what we're dealt with here. And that immediately makes me go, be careful, man. Be careful, because there's nothing holding things like this back from going to zero. And also think Bitcoin was at 70K, 68K over here. You know? Like Bitcoin was at like 68K. And now Bitcoin is at 88K, $20,000 higher, while this thing is like 99.99% lower, right? Okay, it's 98% lower. This is not a good look. So be very careful on this stuff, guys, and then think about your liquidity levels horizontally. And the most important level to me is probably around this 10-cent level. So I'm just going to add one more line. I'm going to delete that because that's kind of messing me up when it's red. So in my opinion, if it could pop back above 4 cents, it could quickly go to 10. And that's probably where I could see this gravitating back to in the event of a buyback, which is a nice move. It's about 700 something percent. But just think, from this place, it had to lose 88%. There's not a whole lot to say about this, man. This does not have a lot of chart history, and the chart history it has, it's just showing me it's perpetually going lower. I mean, I could maybe see that a bottom is coming in. We're just going to quickly pull a reverse fib pull. You see what I did? I'm pulling from this swing low to this swing high in reverse because I want to see where the 1618 leads me, and we're going even deeper, man. I mean, technically, we could do it perfectly from exact low to that exact high, and we're there. So this is actually where it gets really sketchy, like the most sketchy, but it's typically a buying opportunity. I'm not telling you to buy this. This does not look good, but again, if we were to even just get bought back up to the support level, or the prior support, which was a macro support, by the way, so that's not good either. It's still 250%. So whatever initial investments are being made right now in the event, you could de-risk and then whatever, make a quick play. But yeah, I'd be very careful on this. This is not a good looking chart. I would not personally be investing in this right now. Now I'm moving on to a project called SPX 690. I've covered this before. Okay. I didn't know. What's up? Alrighty. Okay, this is interesting. I don't remember this project. SPX 690. Who's talking about this? Why is this a thing? What is this? Can you guys teach me? What is this? All right, so I had a horizontal channel. Horizontal, which is not something I typically do. We're already off to an interesting start here. So I had put a parallel channel, but I kept it horizontal between the levels of 93 cents and 44 cents. I suspect the reason I was doing that is because I was already identifying extremes to the top side, and I wanted to identify what could be these areas to fill out in the event that we couldn't hold those price appreciation, if we couldn't continue into price discovery. And that was effectively a really good thing for me to do because we've made it back into this parallel channel naturally. You could also see that this liquidation event that we had on October 10th, we filled it completely, and we did get a nice little buyback, but it's effectively still kind of stuck at this 382 level. And that 382 level is a common zone to return back to when you're using fibs. So this isn't weird at all, the price that we're getting, but very weird though how this thing hit a new all-time high in July. Like, that's like what XRP did. Huh. Why? Is there an association? Why would this go up? I don't know many projects that have done this. XRP was one of them. That was a very weird thing to see. This is very interesting. Okay. My curiosity is piqued. A little over a year. Okay. I'm going to go out and say that this is at a fair price. Traders have agreed around 40 to 50 cents. When it starts getting above 50 cents, it likes getting gravitated back towards it. And 40 cents seems to be like a range where it's like a very fair price. I don't know if much leverage trading is going on with this. I can tell by the price action that it's not the worst. Um, and if this really did launch at these prices of 7 cents, then that's great. I mean, if you bought any of the launch days, you also got another chance again. What? This hit lows on March 11th and then didn't go lower on April 7th. Huh. This is like an enigma. I don't understand this. Such XRP vibes. Very weird. I look at so many fucking charts. You guys know this. I mean, what are the maths here? I mean, done 200, how many? 50? 246 red pills. Let's say I did 3 charts every week. You guys know I do more than that. That's a lot of fucking charts. And that's undershooting the number, right? But let's just say, there's going to be duplicates and whatever. So let's say I've done 700 charts. This is a rare one I'm looking at. It's not normal. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like it's at a fair price, which would mean I would want to buy this. I would personally, if I had money to speculate on this, if I had enough awareness of what the hell it was, I would definitely consider. But I've been hearing a lot of people have been asking me about this, and I don't know who is telling people. So there's always something going on. You remember the Caspa thing? Like everyone wanted to talk about Caspa. Now no one talks about Caspa. So what's going on with this, guys? Tell me. Teach me. Very interesting. So I don't have a whole lot of updates on this just because look, it's so limited in chart history. We technically barely have we just have a year, a little over a year. And right now I just see like we're nearing a support. So 44 cents is a great support. We've back tested that over here. We've back tested this as zone a couple times, and then recently it feels like it's in a fair price, according to the price action. So that's great. It's great to see. Not a bad looking chart at all for a new chart. Okay, now guys, why are we looking at this coin? Why are we looking at Luna? People are getting excited about Luna. Look at what Luna just had to do. So, okay, it went up recently, 270%, but it had to lose 50 more percent to make that move. And now it's just back at the same exact price that it's been at. This is even worse. Look, it's at the same price it's been at for 280 days, which is lower than where it was for the prior 1,000 days before it went to zero. Why are we looking at this? What's going on? Why are we looking at this? Did Do Kwon get found? Did he like have a transition surgery and he's now a woman and he's hot or something? Like, what is it? What is the thing? Why are we looking at this? Are people really excited about this pump right here? Because if that's the case, that's sad. Chief Wolf is tears falling from my eye. The feather fell from my hair. Who gives a shit about this? Remember, this is the project that went to 119. It went to $119, which is 9/11 code on Satoshi's birthday, and then it went to zero on a lunar eclipse, on a total lunar eclipse. And now here we are, and it's just been perpetually going lower and lower and lower. And up until December, the beginning of this month, just 2 weeks ago, it went even lower than where it's been. It's filling the death wick. And now it's up, and people want to talk about this? Like, what is going on? I'm sorry, but like, I have to be a real one with you guys. If this is the stuff that you want to look at just because it had like a couple of days of up, eh, Yeah, like who cares? Whatever, man. I don't care about like being the one that's trying to tell people what they should care about. Like, I just think I could only assume the only reason anyone wants to look at this is because it had a good week last week. Is that it? Like, but otherwise, you see what it took for it to have a good week. This is like you fall on your face so many fucking times that finally you get up and everyone's like clapping and they give you a bronze medal. They're like, there you go, Timmy, you did it. Now, Timmy lost again. You don't just give medals to everybody because you feel bad. And this is like that one week of it's like a mercy medal, you know? Anyways, I hope for the best for everyone who still pays attention to Luna. If you're investing in Luna, I hope it goes to the moon for you. But this has been a psyop for a long time. Fuck Do Kwon. He's an absolute piece of shit. And anyone who does that to anybody deserves, well, you know, they'll get what they deserve. And I don't want to say I'm much of a believer in karma, but that sack of potatoes was blatant about his criminality. So, whatever. Okay, we're looking at Bitcoin Cash. Whoa, we're breaking out. Bitcoin Cash chart looking better. It's like these OG projects are looking better and better and better. Every time I look at them, whether it be Monero, they're all looking good, which gives me hope. This is actually a really good breakout, guys. And I usually am very honest and I don't like this project typically, but we have one major rejection going back to 2017. And the reason I'll be honest why I don't love this project is because over here, Bitcoin, the regular Bitcoin, was $19,000. $19,000 when this thing was $4,000. Then it dropped to $1,500. And then Bitcoin went to $60,000. Now, recently, on this move over here, Bitcoin was $120,000. And this thing is now still 65% lower than when Bitcoin was 60K. This has not had a, yeah. So, but if you bought the bear market, good. Good job. If you bought this bear market in 2018, great. You're making money and that's all that matters, right? Like, so I make bad investments too. I just feel like this psyop is getting people away from Bitcoin and the opportunities there. Now, Bitcoin, of course, maybe doesn't have as much ROI moving forward as this thing does. If you bought the absolute bottom to today on Bitcoin Cash, though, in 2022, this thing is up 529%. Now let's measure the bottom in 2022 for Bitcoin to where we are today. And you are negligible. Like, this is negligible. This is 467%. Okay. So, yes, it is technically outperforming Bitcoin, but not by much. And you needed to buy the exact bottom. And also, that is like the best it's been for you. So, if you were holding back in 2018, you would still also only be up 500%. While if you go back to Bitcoin's bottom, which I know I don't really need to do this, but then we measure, and now we have a completely different story because Bitcoin is up 2,600% higher today, and we're in the midst of a corrective phase. So that's why I don't really love these sort of things like Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic. Like, they're all nice to see them doing better recently because it makes me feel like, oh, we're moving away from like the new shit coins and the market is going back to the way it kind of was in that 2017 2018 timeframe where it required like actual understanding and knowledge of these blockchain technologies, and you needed to position yourself in some actual stuff. Hard to say that about Bitcoin Cash, but you needed to actually like have a technology behind what you were fucking doing. In 2020 and 2021, it was, oh my God, NFTs. You know, people were buying digital yachts in the metaverse, saying that they live next to Snoop Dogg in the metaverse. I mean, it was pure, it was psychopathy. So I like actually seeing Bitcoin Cash breaking out. It shows me that there's a maturity coming back to crypto, I hope. But yeah, rejection, rejection. Let me throw another one of these X's up here. And then all rejections, but then we're breaking out. Now we've come out of this pattern. We've back tested it at a key level of resistance this thing's been dealing with for some time. And this is the area where it's make or break. And Bitcoin Cash looks very good here, in my opinion. So I'm going to wrap up today's podcast there. We're at an hour and a half. This Bitcoin Cash chart looks pretty damn good. I would say that we need to clear 620, and then there's some thousands right behind the corner. Thousands right behind the corner. I'd say this is possible in April or March. 1,000. So like 100% move from here, given the situation with Bitcoin and the recovery. So I like this. This setup right here is a nice little cheeky 100% move ahead. It's nothing that's going to turn your pennies into millions, but it is really good to see these OG projects having stronger looking charts lately. Same thing goes for Tron and even Monero when I looked at that chart last. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. I appreciate, super grateful for every single one of you. I feel like today was a really jam-packed podcast full of little, streams of consciousness here and there, as we usually do. Again, make sure to go check out the link in the description below, and you will be able to see what we're building behind the scenes. A big project coming on New Year's. I'm really excited for this because it's going to be the biggest commitment I've ever made to my future and to the future of Waters Above, and just everything behind the culture of what I stand for and kind of what I want to start putting in motion, this new renaissance. So make sure to check this out. I'm grateful and I appreciate every single one of you. Wishing you all a beautiful rest of your weekend in the Matrix. Much love.